$5 Games presents Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The first thing that happens when starting this game is seeing EA pop up with their launcher asking you to sign in to play the game. Thanks, EA. Online says there are ways around this, but I'm not getting into them right now. The story begins with the protagonist accepting essentially dangerous overtime work. After an accident, he saves his friend with the Force, which is essentially magic if you're unfamiliar with the Star Wars universe. However, his friend noticed him using it, and so he decides to run away, as he is a survivor of the Purge, which the evil government did some time ago. Unfortunately, that ended up not mattering, as the evil government figured out where he was located. Somehow. Didn't get that far to learn how they learned that. Anyways, the evil government decides to kill his friend because they're evil and his friend was showing signs of rebellion. The protagonist then manages to escape due to two anti-evil government people showing up. The anti-evil government people then have the protagonist explore a planet that has a way of restoring the previous form of government before the Purge. This way ended up being a list of people who might be able to use the Force and are still alive. But in order to get this list, they have to pass some random guy's trials. That's where I left off. Gameplay wise, it's a third-person action game. You can hold down a button to block attacks with a few restrictions. One is that you have a block gauge that can run out. The second is that if the enemy glows red, you can't block that attack and you need to dodge it. However, if you block a non-red attack right before you take damage, you instead parry the attack. This causes laser beams to be reflected towards those who shot them and staggers melee opponents. You're also given a force meter that you can use to slow down enemies. And then through leveling up and story progression, you're given more abilities like running on walls. There is a lot of parkouring, platforming in the game, but if you fall down a hole, it teleports you to right before the jump, missing only a little bit of life. And by a lot of parkouring, I mean that the first 10 minutes of the game is just traversing through this environment, which I thought looked pretty awesome and very cinematographic. They did a really good job with the characters. You can tell by the way the protagonist speaks that he really struggles being a survivor of the Purge. There are a lot of collectibles, and in order to get everything, you have to return to the area after collecting the appropriate ability, which is backtracking. For the most part, it looks to be disappointing cosmetics though, but it's ultimately up to you if that's worth it. If an ability you don't have is necessary for progression, they mark the area red on the map. There's also a lot of lore entries and enemy corpses to scan to read about their biology if you want to learn more about the world. Personally, I didn't find the combat to be engaging, but I loved the graphics and the character interactions. Even the regular humanoid enemies have self-aware humorous dialogue. I do worry a bit that all of EA's focus was on the start of the game for selling purposes, and that it would wear out its welcome as the game progresses. But from what I've heard, the only thing that becomes tiring is the parry system. So overall, it seems to be a great game. When I go through it, I plan on beelining to the plot, as I'm not interested in exploring the rest of the game, unless there's a hidden boss somewhere. That's a wrap for this game. Consider subscribing and picking this game up instead of some rather dangerous scaffolding.